Thank you guys for joining me. So, what we heard from Sasha, 50% less in aviation, and I can tell you we already have the problem that we don't have enough pilots for the whole demand that we have worldwide. And this is not just because of COVID, that was already before COVID pretty clear that we don't have enough staff in the aviation industry. And then Sasha also said 650 billion euros economic net present value and 25 to 72 million tons of CO2, which is huge, but it also says emissions by 2065. When I look at what we want to reach to, I think 2065 is much later than the Gulfstream is finishing, so let's see. But that's something that I want to tap into with you guys. We explore a bit what holds back large-scale development across Europe, and what do we have to do to come from tech to and look into infrastructure, look into corporations, and look into what has to be done in regards to culture to actually make Hyperloop the fifth mode of transportation. So maybe to warm up for everybody, can you give a short introduction of where your organization stands right now? What's your latest milestones? And what is maybe a current bottleneck? Maybe Juan, you start, and then we go down the corridor here.
Okay, so do you hear me well? Yeah, I think so. Okay, so yeah, my name is Juan Vicen, and I'm co-founder of Zeleros. We are the Hyperloop company from Spain. We emerged from the Hyperloop competition in 2016, and since then we have been able to raise up to 17 million euros in investment that we have devoted for research and development on the critical technologies of Hyperloop. In our case, since the beginning, we have been testing systems like levitation, magnetic propulsion, linear motors, and also electric powertrains, because in the end, in our vision, Hyperloop has a big, has a battery, an energy storage system that can be used to minimize the cost of infrastructure. In that sense, so we validated some of the technologies. For example, our linear motor is called linear switch reluctance, and we tested it in Sagunto in the port facilities. And since then, also we are very focused on the battery business, where we have already tested some batteries for Hyperloop, but now we are also seeing the potential of how this knowledge can be applied to other systems.
Thank you. Take over the ball to Tim. What's your current bottleneck and its current status?
So good morning, everyone. I'm Tim. I'm one of the co-founders of Hardt Hyperloop. And we actually also came forward from the SpaceX Hyperloop competition from the Delft Hyperloop team, which I'm happy to see here, already back in 2017, which we managed then to win. We've raised a bit more than 30 million euros so far, and the biggest milestone that we have achieved is the delivery of the European Hyperloop Center. And that is a test and demonstration facility of more than half a kilometer in length, at which we can basically prove every essential Hyperloop technology.
Say that again, half a kilometer it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 550 meters of Hyperloop pipes, and from start to finish, 420 meters, and that is because it also includes a lane switch, which is an essential technology to realize Hyperloop networks. So this is also something that we were able to demonstrate there. These essential technologies are magnetic levitation, guidance, propulsion, and the lane switching. And the biggest bottleneck now is to get towards the next project. So therefore, we are teaming up with strategic partners and working very actively with project developers to go from this half a kilometer facility to one of multiple kilometers and really prove the system in its full essence.
Cool. That just means that what Klaus said, we have to, we are still in Europe and at the forefront. When I compare it to facilities, test facilities, otherwise somewhere else in the world, it would be Chennai, they also have 420 meters approximately, right? So that is in India.
Yeah, that's correct. The biggest difference there is that it's a straight pipe, and the European Hyperloop Center also includes this lane switch, and you can only lane switch if you take a small corner. So the amount of technologies that can be tested there are at the higher scale than what we currently see in India. But it's of course great to see this sort of global movement in making Hyperloop a reality.
Yeah, as you said, you need to partner up with potential other companies to actually make it a reality. Moving on to Gabriele, also your biggest milestone and the bottlenecks.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me here as well. Yeah, Neoways is probably the youngest and the latest kid on the block when it comes to Hyperloop developers. However, the people behind Neoways has actually been working on Hyperloop for quite a long time. As many others before me, we started back in the days when it came to the Hyperloop competitions, and then over the last 5 years, I was the project lead of the Hyperloop research program at the Technical University of Munich. And then finally, at the beginning of this year, we decided to take a leap with a couple of other people to go from the research program to now starting a company in this realm. And then you might ask yourselves, why would you do that? This is a good question to ask. And I think that the timing is right now. We've been talking about some of the test facilities that are there already. We ourselves at the Technical University of Munich also built what we call the Hyperloop demonstrator, so a first small segment of what we believe a Hyperloop might look like, that we use to demonstrate some of the key system, but in particular also demonstrate operations with passengers, which was one of the key aspects as a German research program, first focus on safety. That's generally a good thing to do. And so now we see that we have all these demonstrations. Most of them are in Europe, some of them are as well in India, but now the next step from that is to actually move from all this research that was done towards something that looks more like industrialization and then commercialization of the technology. So that's why we started the company, and at the same time, we're actually seeing some countries moving quite forward. First and foremost, well, Italy, as we discussed as well last year, has been the leader in that regard in actually aiming to build a longer test facility. But at the same time, we currently have the same momentum in Germany, where the German government has set the goal of building what they call a Hyperloop reference track. And so this is also very good for us as a German company to see this momentum in our own country. So that's the reason for us to start a company, and that's what we're working towards.
And for the newbies in the room to mention, you said you are the latest kid on the block. Neoways came out of the TU Munich. So you also were in one of the teams.
Yes, I recently realized that it's 9 years since I joined the Hyperloop team in Munich, so it's a long time.
9 years, oh my goodness. Yeah, so not that new kid, just on the papers new.
With a new name.
Thank you. And on to Antoine, last but not least, what's the last milestone and what's the biggest bottleneck right now?
Yeah, so hello everyone, Antoine, so I'm from Eurotube. We are very similar to everything that was said until now. We also came out of the SpaceX competition. The only thing we did a bit differently is we are not a company, we are a research institute, an independent research institute. We were not, like TUM, taken within the university. We were given another status in Switzerland it's called of national importance, but it just means we are independent. And we follow the same approach. So we are right now building our demonstrator, which is called DemoTube. I think one thing I will mention is we have a different angle in what we try to tackle. We do not look at the switch. We did not look at the vehicle too much. We really focus on the infrastructure and making it at a feasible cost. That's just for the approach. And on the where we stand, I would say the same. I mean, we have a demonstrator. It's going to arrive. We are going to validate our few key technologies, and that's our scope. And then the next step needs to be a few kilometer test track. It has to be.
It has to be a few kilometers. What is a few?
Yeah, 3 to 5. I mean, approximately. I mean, if we can do 30, maybe, but I don't think it's doable.
For everybody, like where can we have 3 kilometers? Like, would it be on something like a facility of trade shows because they have 3 kilometers of halls, and maybe there is something you can do aside from that? Where is that possible?
Maybe I can say something on it. So we have for the last 6 months been working on a feasibility study for the German Hyperloop reference track. And in principle, what the feasibility study does is exactly the job you're asking about. So look for suitable locations and suitable combination of factors to actually make such a test facility happen. I'm happy to report that some of these locations exist. There are not many. The main fact is obviously that even finding a 3-kilometer line somewhere that you can put in the landscape is not easy, in particular if you aim to do it in a reasonable time frame. I think we'll talk about it more later, but I think we've become very used to the fact that infrastructure projects take forever. And some of the reason is that we have placed ourselves a lot of roadblocks to make infrastructure happen. And so in particular, our focus was, okay, how do we have a potential to make it happen in a couple of years? And there are some specific locations. Trade fairs are generally not 3 kilometers, at least not in Germany.
Okay, the one in Las Vegas is definitely.
But there is let's think, for instance, there is other kind of infrastructure where you generally have a 3-kilometer long strip. That might be an idea where we could go first.
Okay.
That would be a possibility.
The feasibility study will be published soon, or is that already published?
I don't know if it will be published.
Okay.
But it's an internal work that it's not my decision to publish.
Got it. As you now understand, they all have a lot of experience already as they were competing in the Hyperloop teams. Going back to Tim, you already mentioned lane switching in the test facility. What is, from a technical features, the most other challenging thing when it comes from scale from a prototype to a full network? Is it the vacuum integrity or the pod tube interface? What else is the roadblock there?
Yeah, very good question. So I think at one point we have the benefit as a Hyperloop community that the Hyperloop system is actually a combination of technologies that are already proven in many other industries. For example, magnetic levitation. We have seen magnetic levitation trains for quite a while. Large pipes is also something that we are familiar with. But the key challenge is to integrate this into one operatable system where it's really working as the Hyperloop is intended. So we've done a great step there in the European Hyperloop Center with our test vehicle. And the next step is to really scale this up towards higher speeds at longer facilities where all of these systems will work interoperably with each other. And that is a big challenge. From a technical point of view, it is very feasible. I actually don't see the biggest challenge there. The biggest challenge I foresee in making that happen is public sector leadership, where we really see Europe or other governments stepping up and say, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to build. If you look, for example, how it has been realized in Japan, you have the Shinkansen. It was the Japanese government that said, okay, we're going to build this here and this is the speed that we're going to target. Why is China so big in high-speed rail? They have a very strong vision how to connect all the large cities, and they're building now more high-speed rail than the rest of the world combined. Why did SpaceX become one of the most valuable companies in the world? It's because they got awarded a contract of more than 1 billion by NASA to actually build a rocket and deliver it. And that's where I think Europe can also make the difference. Have a strong vision, how Hyperloop can be connected in Europe, and really say, this is what we're going to do.
I think that's a fantastic example with SpaceX. They built the Dragon, and now Dragon is used all the time to actually deliver whatever is needed in the infrastructure of the International Space Station. And so they always have to use now SpaceX. NASA has to use the Dragon to bring things up and down. And so a fantastic example. Gabriele, I'm looking over the conference or the trade show here. So yesterday I already could go around and see who's setting up, and this morning, and also when I look at the webpage, we have a lot of people here who work in smart city technologies, and there's also NVIDIA and Dell, and who come all with AI and so forth, and there are a lot of people talking about digital twins. So I was thinking is it important in regards to, or let's say, how important are modularities, phase development, or digital twins in reducing cost and schedule risk, so that you can actually, how far along is Neoways to apply these technologies to make something more modular?
I mean, the greatest advantage that we have compared to maybe the times where other technologies were built is that today's tools are way better.
Yeah.
So engineering tools have become way better. It's not that we don't complain about them still, but it's, and I think some people might know about it, but still some of the technologies that we have today to do all this work are way better. So that means that we should be able to know way more before we build, well, before maybe you first had to build to have any data. We should be able to know before we build, and we have the tools to bring all these large machines that we're trying to build, which in principle is what we're trying to do, together in the digital world before we build them. On the other hand, in the end, the only thing that is true is what happens in the physical world.
Okay.
At least for a hardware product. So in the end, you will still need to test, and that's why we mostly will be talking, or if you ask us, most of the time we talk about test facilities, because in the end, you need the data from the real world. But regardless of that, still much can be done. And I mean, NVIDIA is at every trade show, I think, at the moment.
True.
But so maybe there is something we can learn from, and it's the most valuable company in the world. Maybe there is something we can learn there as well.
Yeah, you can see the headshot of the CEO somewhere on the trade show.
Seems to be doing a good job. So
exactly. I wish I would have bought some stock options 10 years ago when someone said I should work there. But maybe a question for all of you. Klaus mentioned Airbus. And Airbus, for instance, they built the Airbus 380 in a 5-side cave. Before, like that, it was a digital twin. So before they touched any screw, they built it in this back projection room that they have in Hamburg. And I was wondering, when you're saying, okay, we first need test centers. So afterwards, the real build of one of the capsules, can we do that in one of those rooms? And can we have such a room maybe in Groningen, where then everybody can come together and actually like try to build it in the digital world before you basically waste some of the material that you would need for that?
Yeah, it's absolutely out of the essence to build it first fully digitally before you run into any production. It's very comparable how the European Hyperloop Center has been built. It was fully digitalized, where you know where every screw will be, where every weld will be, before you actually start building it. And that's something that can be very well done together. There are now a lot of programs in which you can cooperatively work together on your digital design. So that's a real necessity.
Cool.
Maybe to add one little point, I mean, the reason we talk about test facilities is not that we are looking to waste steel and concrete, or that we want. The thing is, in the end, every digital tool is only good if you can also test it in hardware. And hardware is the final goal, and the testing facility is the final goal. So building all this model, preparing everything is how engineering work is done today. So this is a normal step in between, but the final goal has to be building what you've done digitally in the real world and demonstrate that it fulfills what the digital world said. And so that's why the end goal it's always the hardware, at least for hardware products, as Hyperloop is. So that's why that's where the ball is. But yeah, on the step there, obviously, all the simulations will be done before any steel and concrete is built.
Yeah, thank you. And we're looking into the bottlenecks, and you and also Klaus mentioned that we need the political will to actually have the facility, the test facility at the beginning, and then really to make it a real thing. But that also means there is huge costs involved. So can we then maybe give the politics I don't know, something to say, look, that's where we can cut costs. So Antoine, from more from the infrastructure point of view, where can we cut some costs? Or what is the biggest cost driver? Is it the material, as you said, concrete and steel, or is it I don't know, sealing of the vacuum or any maintenance? Like, what would be the problem?
I mean,
or the biggest cost?
What's interesting there is, I mean, we all did here our different feasibility studies with some different cost estimates that we now are harmonizing within the Hyper4Rail projects. We all had per park the same numbers, and you reach something which is basically making sense economically. So cost is not so much I would say the biggest question anymore. Everything converges towards if we can fulfill this cost, it works.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean there are not savings involved, right? For example, one of the key things we do is try to make the barb out of concrete. It's mainly a cost reason. So there is still a lot of work and potentially a lot of savings. But I would take another angle because the biggest bottleneck right now, I would see, to be able to unlock this stepwise approach towards a bigger test facility and later on a pilot is the trust in the numbers. And to get the trust in the numbers, it's one thing to have a simulation and to say, I did a very big Excel file and I get a very beautiful number. But this doesn't have as much of an impact as I did this 400-meter test facility with a lane switch, and the lane switch is costing X. And that's basically why all of us did a first demonstrator on one key subsystem. Mm-hmm. And we reach a first cost on a small scale, which is then, of course, more expensive than when it's being scaled up to a full production, but it's already something. And the next step is to unlock the next kind of chunk of trust. That's why we talk about 3 to 5 kilometers. Mm-hmm. Because if we build the same thing again, we won't reach kind of a new confidence level in what we provide.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tim.
I would like to add something because I agree with the trust factor that is very important for everybody to eventually use and implement Hyperloop. But the cost is an essential factor also for its success. So I believe that for the successful implementation of Hyperloop on a global level, the fast and cost-effective implementation of the infrastructure, that's sort of where the holy grail of success of Hyperloop lies. Fast and cost-effective implementation of the infrastructure, that is what will make the difference, because you need a new type of infrastructure. Implementing infrastructure is never easy. If you look to roads, railways, it's always a hassle, a lot of potential for cost overruns, and you don't want to have those elements with Hyperloop. So this absolute focus on cost-effective infrastructure that's easy to implement, that's what will make the key difference.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I want to touch a bit to the parts of policy, regulation, standards, and I know that Lucas will touch on that in the panel much further after the coffee break. But Juan, it was mentioned, so cost efficient, we need to trust in the numbers. What is a challenge to bridge the gap between the technologists and the policymakers?
Yeah, so I think in that sense I can speak from the experience, because we've been trying in Spain to set up a test track since 2018. That's when we discovered the necessity on implementing a test track. There were already some of the technologies validated, and the next step was let's integrate these technologies. So I can explain in that sense what we have seen that is the gap, no? And we understand one of the things that was Tim saying is very important is that there is in politics nowadays it's very difficult to see politicians that are doing risky things. Usually they go more for the things that are not going to make a lot of noise. No? So in the end, when you are talking about Hyperloop, it's a totally innovative transport system. It takes courage, no? It takes courage to support entrepreneurs instead of maybe big corporations that are already having their big budgets, no? So we consider there is a lack of courage in that sense that is making that the project goes slower, no, than expected. In that sense, we consider that that is a project of such an impact. No, we cannot start from how can we start cutting costs. No, so we need to start from a program that is serious and that can test the technologies as it is deserved. No, so in that sense, in Spain, what we've seen is that even if there is a space, sometimes there is a lack of knowledge on the specific tools to fund such a innovative project. So, for example, innovative procurement is a tool that is starting to be used where there is a tender. So there could be a tender on innovation, but the regional administrations sometimes lack. Have never launched one like this. They are very used to normal tenders where they buy, for example, a battery that is already done. But if they need to buy a new system where they don't have knowledge, they start asking you a lot of questions of how this system needs to be tendered. And you cannot do it because you are a private company. No? You cannot say the government what to do. So there's not a clear path on how to launch these things. The public-private partnership has been successful in the Netherlands to develop the first test track, but we consider that in the end, on the public side, there is a gap of knowledge maybe on these new tools, and it's what is maybe delaying the progress in Europe. But we are confident that we can collaborate and we find ways to collaborate with the governments to speed up this process, of course.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Antoine, maybe from the standpoint, Groningen, and correct me if I'm wrong, Switzerland has a test facility that is also similarly used, like the one in Groningen.
Yeah, similar, yeah. I mean, a bit shorter, 120 meters instead of 400. And the main thing we test is the concrete tube. Whereas in Groningen, the main thing which is being tested is the levitation system and the lane switch. But
so both
similar
is needed.
in size. And
yeah, both is needed. So how can these different facilities interact? Like, is it a complementary role because you're saying that these are different? Are you sharing data? Are you sharing the outcomes of testings? Is that all done in the Hyperloop development program? How does it work to interact together?
So, I mean, we've been in touch since forever, but I would say the actual data sharing is gradually increasing over time. I think until probably 2023, it was just we were just exchanging openly. And now, also with both the European testing cluster and Hyper4Rail, we start to really share proper reports and proper data. It is indeed very complementary because we are all testing different things and all having different focus. It's also, I would say, the focus is also clearer now that not everyone is doing everything, but we all have kind of our different subsystems that we look at. And I mean, I don't know. I'm now. We were always a bit special because we are outside of the EU, so we are forced to be kind of more open to participate. All of that, and it used to be a bit more reluctance. Now everyone is very open. So I don't know. I'm very positive, at least on the trend.
Since when is everybody very open? Since when is that a trend?
I think it has been a continuous improvement. I would name it like this. It's just that now we also work more together. We understand each other better. I think it's just a gradual process. I don't think we had any resentment before. Huh? It's just that we were not talking that much.
Well, then we have conferences like this and the Hyperloop week, and maybe Juan also has.
Maybe I can explain this because I think from a different perspective. I think that usually, like, what is happening with Hyperloop is that each country wants to have a leadership, and that sometimes goes in contradiction with Europe. That Europe has been always like collaborate in order to create new things, and Airbus is the example, no? But I think sometimes when we got taught about competitions, no, and how we are always going for winning as a personal thing, no, like winning as a team. And I think that has changed as soon as the companies start raise funding and they get also the feedback from investors where they say, okay, how are you compatible with the other things that are being done? Or you talk to the policymakers and say, how does it fit? Do you want to create 3 different Hyperloops, one for each country, or do you want one that can fit all? No? So in the end, it has been also a process, I think, where also the startups, we have learned, no, to collaborate together and pass from the mentality of be only in one country to say, okay, in order this to work, we need to create one single system. So I could say that we have learned about this also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can all jump in.
It goes back very deeply, right? I think it was 2020 when we signed the letter of intent to develop a harmonized system, and that led to the setup of the so-called JTC 20, which is a Joint Technical Standardization Committee to really standardize Hyperloop. And in 2022, the Hyperloop Development Program was founded, also with the other Hyperloop developers participating in that, to really keep taking the steps towards this unified system and go that together instead of each company separately.
Mm-hmm. I think just one last thing, just to promote what Sasha was saying. I think now with Hyper4Rail, there's a formal excuse to actually talk to each other. So I think that's good. And I think that's why projects at European level are important, since we were talking about it before, because this gives a framework also for companies or initiatives from different parts of Europe to actually have a reason or a formal reason to be more in touch with each other. again, we were talking about it before anyway, but I think these projects are important at European level to actually bring us together, just to give a recommendation to the audience.
Thank you. Klaus wants to say something in the audience. Do you want to, or is that as he was handed the microphone? I think they have to switch, like you just talk and then they will switch it on. The hand mic needs to be on. Thank you, Carlos.
No, I think this was indeed a very, very important discussion. And
I think you have to hold it a bit.
You have mentioned all the roadblocks, I think. And it proves again what I said earlier and what you just mentioned. The fact that the European Hyperloop developers work together allows them to address these roadblocks, because not one single proponent would be able to actually address these roadblocks. It's simply not possible unless you have a very large company that says, I really want to do this, I put billions, but that's not the case. I mean, suppose Airbus says, I put 2 or 3 billion, they might have the political way to do it, but it's not happening. So the fact that the companies that we have in Europe work together, I think is the best guarantee that we can address these roadblocks. Maybe just one more word, and that was not mentioned so clearly, but I think we need to discuss that also very clearly with our colleagues from the Commission and at the national level. We can build a 3 to 5 kilometer test track if we find a place where the certification process will not take 10 years, because if it takes 10 years, it's not even worth starting. I'm sorry, because by that time the Chinese will have built it and we don't need to build it anymore. So if we cannot build in Europe, and that's the real challenge, if we cannot build in Europe in the next, I'm saying 2 to 3 years, in my own work program, I put it has to be started by this time of next year. The start has to be given. Because if we don't do that, it will simply not work. Now the question which has not been addressed, or which not so clearly, is a 3 to 5 kilometer test track will not be built by private money, because there's nothing to be gained. No one can make profit out of a 3 to 5 kilometer test track. That means that track has to be financed by public sources. And we talk about anywhere between 200 and 500 million to build that, and then it can be shared. The colleagues have been very clear. They could use one test track to test different technologies. So we don't need to build 5. We don't need to build one for Zeleros, one for Bavaria, and one for Switzerland. And we will not in any case. So let's build one. But we need to find these 200 to 500 million from public sources. Now, just to put that into perspective, on autonomous driving, on many other technologies, on batteries, billions are spent. We are not even out for billions. We can, with 500 million, Hyperloop can make that step that it needs right now to show the proof of concept, to show it works, and that's the credibility factor. Then you get the credibility. If we have that track, and if we have shown the full system integration, the proof of concept, then we will have done it. So the real challenge at the moment is to find a limited amount of public money to get over that step and quickly. Then I think all the other problems which have been mentioned can be addressed at the same time and could be solved in time to have something which is near the market in 5 years from now.
Thank you. Actually, you already stepped into the question I have at the end of this panel, so you're already giving me an intersection to that. But before we do that, are there any questions or comments from the audience?
I have a question.
Yes, just... And maybe tell your name, because we know who Klaus Rudichhauser is, but maybe tell us who
I'm
you are.
Pepijn Rijn. At this point in time, I'm lead scalability on the Delft Hyperloop team, the student team. I'm really an advocate for Hyperloop. But we're talking about very different technological standards at this point in time. And we're talking about constructing a chest tube, which is multiple kilometers. I've been in the EHC multiple times. We're working with the Hardt Hyperloop concept as well, where our levitation system is on the top of the Hyperloop. But there are quite a lot of technical standpoints at this point in time on the Hyperloop concept. I'm wondering what your point of view is, maybe for Gabriele, on like when are we actually trying to establish like a technical concept that we all agree on, because we really want to avoid what's happening with rail, where we all have this different kind of rail width, different kind of electrification systems, which is really annoying. Why the rail in Europe is really held back as well. So I really see how and when in the time are we actually going to establish a true concept of the Hyperloop in this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just I think the answer is quite clear. I think that's the main goal of the Hyper4Rail project that Sasha presented before. I think one of the reason, obviously, that companies started working closer to each other is, as was discussed before, that working together, and Klaus mentioned as well, increases the chances of being successful. But I think the other point exactly is what you were saying about the rail system, that we should avoid the mistakes of the past and the difficult integration of rail systems in Europe. They were born out of historical reasons, but today we haven't integrated Europe, and so we should actually behave like one. And I think, yes, I think, however, and I think I've mentioned this before, we were talking about what has been done so far with demonstrators, and you're absolutely right. The demonstrators test different aspects on the one side, but they also test different technical concepts. And I think that was good and is a good foundation indeed to explore different options. At the same time, exactly what now Hyper4Rail is doing with the harmonization, and then at some point GTC 20 will pick up for standardization, is really to move towards one concept. Now, I'm not involved in the day-to-day of Hyper4Rail, so you might need to ask Sasha or some other people that are in the room that how good they're coming along and when we can expect to have one concept. But the road we are on is exactly that one, or the rail we are on.
Is that question answered for you, or? Cool. And Lucas.
You just had...
Lucas, maybe some people don't know you. I asked him, so maybe you also tell us who you are. Lucas Eschmond.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm the moderator of the next panel. You'll hear from me. I'm a research student at the University of Emden-Leer and Institute of Hyperloop Technology. And I've got a question for you, Gabriele, as well. You said you're not part of the Hyper4Rail consortium, but will you, or are you looking into using that technology as well that is coming out of that proposal? And then for test tracks in Germany, do you envision that could be as well for all the test tracks that are supposed? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes, so yeah, maybe just for context, Neoways is not part of the consortium because when the proposal was written, the company was not founded yet. But the Technical University of Munich, and Dominic will hold one of the master classes later, in part about this, is part of the consortium. And yes, I'm not working on the day-to-day. I just get updates from time to time. That being said, so again, the university is part of a program. The spin-off of the university could not be part of the project due to timing reasons. Anyhow, yes, we do fully support, also as a company, as a spin-off of the university, we do fully support the work that's been done in Hyper4Rail, just because, exactly as you said, we do believe that the one harmonized concept in Europe is the thing you need to be successful and the only way forward in principle, because on the one hand we should avoid having different concepts in different nations, on the other hand that will simply not happen due to the fact that we need public support. That being said, I think the important question, I think Sasha alluded before to the fact that one of the ultimate goal of Hyper4Rail is indeed a test facility, then to test the harmonized concept on a longer track, 3 to 5 kilometers. And I think then the question becomes, okay, where is this test facility? And how do we build it and when do we build it? And just to be very frank, right now there is only 2 member states that are taking the lead on that. There is Italy that has announced it some years ago, and I don't know if there's anybody present today, but there is a project going on there, and there is Germany that has recently announced to build what they call a Hyperloop reference line, which is a name I proposed.
Sorry, just for that one, also context. Germany announced that, and do they do that in Bavaria or in Hamburg? Because we hear in the press it's both.
That's up for debate. Anyhow, so there is different ideas on where to do it. We have been proposing this hyper-reference line back in 2018. So finally now it made it into the German federal agenda. And in the end, the question is just, so there will be one test facility where we ideally can use as a follow-up for Hyper4Rail to test the harmonized concept. And again, the question is what country will take the lead. Ideally, also the European Commission would be involved in that, but right now we're seeing most of the momentum coming from the member states, with Italy and Germany probably just being the most courageous at the moment, and maybe some countries following up when they see that there is competition.
No, we are not really famous for building an airport really fast. Maybe we are getting better.
Yes, that's exactly the problem I was hinting at before.
Other questions? Otherwise, I have one closing question. Okay. Klaus already touched on that. So let's talk about, I mean, we already talked about SpaceX, so let's talk about a moonshot for the next 36 months. And when it comes to Hyperloop credibility, what would be your dream? What could, like from a technical point, but also, I mean, we already touched on that, we need the political will. But from a technical point, to prove that it all works, is it a cross-border demonstration? Is it not 2, but 10 kilometers vacuum suction? What is it? What could you, like, if you could like dream big and someone says, of course you get it, here's your fairy giving you this wish come true, what would it be?
Maybe I can start from this side. So in our case, we consider like the main objective is to secure a European development program that is fully funded by by Europe and the member states, where we can consolidate all the experience that the different Hyperloop promoters have gathered during the 10 years that we have been developing all this. No? So there is a competition where hundreds of students are coming and are being trained in Hyperloop technologies. There are Hyperloop startups that are building exciting technologies. And on the other side, there are corporations that are also supporting these startups and waiting for also a message from the public side. No? So in the end, we consider there are more than enough justification to set up a serious program at European level that can be funded and that can ensure the continuation of these projects, because otherwise the different Hyperloop companies will need to find alternative markets to put this knowledge to work, no? And that would be a pity.
Thank you. Tim?
No, I agree with that. My answer can be a bit shorter. It's like the final investment decision of a 500 million euro program by the European Commission to deliver a harmonized Hyperloop line.
Okay.
Yes, I think just looking historically, back in 2018, after we had been taking part in this Hyperloop competition, I was asked back then by the Bavarian government to say what the roadmap to building a Hyperloop should look like. And we said a demonstrator, then a reference line, and then a first longer 50-kilometer plus application line.
It's still the
roadmap is taking longer than I proposed back then, but we are on that road, and I think the next step is clearly to have a several kilometer test facility where the harmonized concept can be tested, and it actually serves. That's why we use the word reference, as a showcase for what the technology should look like, so that everybody knows this is what a Hyperloop should look like, this is where you can drive it, this is where we show feasibility and so on, and that can really set an example of what it should be, and then regulation can happen based on that and so on and so forth, so that people know this is where Hyperloop is.
Thank you. And Antoine, again, last but not least.
I mean, I agree. If I can dream, I think it would be having this reference line, plus already written down the KPIs of if we achieve X and Y, the next step already clear. Basically the program. Because at least for us on our end right now, we are both trying to do the technology development and building up the vision, and we are trying, all of us in the different countries, to kind of align it into a program. If we have the program, it makes everything easier, because then we can all just target it straight. And then there is no more running around trying to converge all the opinions. It's already there, and then we just have to focus on achieving it, which would be great.
I think that's a perfect end for this panel to get you into coffee break. Thank you so much to Sasha also to give us the overview of where we're standing with Hyper4Rail. And please give a warm applause for our panel here, Juan, Tim, Gabriele, and Antoine.